Design is everything, from the outfit you're wearing to the mobile you're holding. And the feeling, the experience which it gives is user experience design. Today we have with us Anshuman Kumar, who has done his post graduation from IIT Bombay and then he landed into Yahoo, followed by 9 years in Google, and now he is heading design in adaptation and growth in Asana. We are going to touch depths of user experience design in collaboration with technology. Presenting you Anshuman Kumar on our turn podcast series. Hi Anshuman, it's my pleasure having you on my show.
Yeah, pleasure is mine. And I must credit your perseverance. I've been a little difficult to catch, but I admire your persistence and being in touch, and I'm glad to be here.
Thanks a lot for those compliment. With that, I would like to ask you, so how have you been and how has this lockdown actually treated you and what all changes have you observed in design across this pandemic situation?
Uh, that's a loaded question. I have been doing good. Lockdown has been, like many people, it has impacted me in positive ways and in personal, painful ways. I've lost family members to COVID. At the same time, my son was born during COVID, and the bright side or the silver lining for COVID for me has been that because we were working from home, I could spend more time with my son, and I could see him grow and get to his first birthday that I would have never had the chance to do if I was actually going to work every day. So, in certain ways, there have been dark sides of COVID which have been very hurtful, and there are also a few silver linings. To your last question of how it has impacted the design industry, I'll say in many different ways. And again, like there have been positive changes and there have been major setbacks. And it impacts the design industry in like so many different ways. It starts from design is for people, and if you're a designer, suddenly because of these restrictions, your access to people ends. Your access to your colleague ends. So working with other colleagues become difficult. Your access to your consumers or users end. So running research becomes very difficult. And this is at a very tactical level where you're designing something. If you bubble it up to an industry level, there are certain products that found it really difficult to succeed when COVID restrictions came in. So any product that was around, say, events, went into a very difficult situation, and designers and people working on those products found it really difficult. At the same time, the silver lining was COVID also pushed the boundaries for certain new kind of products. So a lot of like on-demand services, which were there at the horizon, but they became necessary and essential for everyone. So be it delivering your medicines, your food, your clothes to home, something that people were not always very comfortable with, but suddenly they became very comfortable with it. They were expecting all the services to be delivered to them. So on demand changed. And if you also look at it, like designing for healthcare services changed drastically. If you look at like healthcare sector, there were like a lot of startups and a lot of companies who have been there for years and decades, but they were very their work was very scientific. A lot of it was not like user-centered work because the scale of those projects and how it interfaced with customers were very limited. So during this phase, last 15 months, 18 months, the way telehealth has changed is phenomenal to see. So I would say COVID has its dark sides. I try to focus on the positives.
Yeah, absolutely. Every this pandemic has actually brought in many advantages with a downside obviously involved with that. And when there's a pandemic, people actually start looking for solutions to actually overcome it, and which has been a positive side over this, which you actually mentioned very rightly. And also congratulations on your baby, and it was great hearing that you could see your first steps of your baby. Yeah. So with that, let's actually, before getting into design and more deeply into that, I would like to ask you, so how you actually got into architecture first? So you have actually done your architecture and then you have actually moved to design.
Yeah.
This is architecture journey.
I would say it happened by chance. And if I look back, I can see certain elements in my personality growing up which showed some creative streaks, but I never grew up imagining that I'm going to be an architect or a designer. And we were chatting offline a little bit earlier that growing up in India, especially, I was growing up in my teens were in like 2000s, 1 to 10, and well, not the teens, but actually like early 20s. I would say still like it was like growing up in a middle class Indian family was like you have to be an engineer, you have to go to engineering college, and so I didn't have a very different journey. I never dreamt to be a designer. What I really dreamt to do was to do something with planes. So either I wanted to fly them or build them. But unfortunately or fortunately, I realized that I was not fit enough to clear NDA to join Air Force, or I was not smart enough or focused enough to clear JE to join an aeronautics program. And there was a moment where I was completely lost because that's what I wanted to do, and I was finding no avenues. And at that moment, I was introduced to a family friend who happened to be an architect, and the more I looked into architecture, I found this amazing blend of creativity and engineering, and building something like physical and tangible that people use. And uh, I was just drawn to it. And I decided to join an architecture school. And that's how it happened. It was not planned at all.
That's wonderful. So how has your journey been in architecture? So yeah, people actually spend 5 years, and which are one of the hectic years of your life being an architecture student. So how has that journey been?
It was, I think it was the most formative phase of my life and my personality. Uh, Architecture has an advantage over engineering schools, which is that you have one more additional year to spend time with your friends, colleagues. It's also a very creative program. So I remember the first year of my architecture school, we were like the first semester, we were basically drawing freehand parallel lines. And that was, if I talk to my like other previous like 12th standard classmates who were like at IITs doing engineering, they were like, what are you doing? Like, I have you joined an arts program. So it started with that. It was very unexpected. And but the more we got involved in those 5 years, what I really discovered was architecture was not just about utility of the space we are designing for people, but at its core, it was more about designing for human feelings and how we can stitch a series of spaces together, and imagine how people would feel in that space as they live their lives in those spaces as they move from one space to the other. So my big learning from architecture was to really look at experiences from a human feeling perspective, and then thinking of a sequence of emotions that we want to tailor for people as they explore that space. In certain ways, it's very close to theater, where you are very intentionally creating a plot, a narrative to invoke certain emotions in people. So some of the good architects and their creations it's like theater. You actually step in and you feel something. You go through a space, you feel something else. So it's like a choreography of emotions, very purposefully stitched together.
Yeah, absolutely. Architecture or any field related to design is human centric, wherein you actually look towards a person, and you actually design it for a person, as you actually mentioned, like you actually tailor it for that particular person, and that's actually wonderful. And with that, I'd like to ask you, so actually you moved from architecture to designing, and you have done your interaction design in masters from IIT Bombay. So how did you actually got from here to there? Whereas from listening to you, I found that you actually love architecture also.
Yeah,
So
I
why
still
did you
do.
actually
Uh,
move towards design?
yeah, so what happened was, as I was completing my architecture program, I got to work with a very talented, at that time, very avant-garde architect in India. His name is Gurjeet Singh Matharu. He has an office in Ahmedabad, and I worked there. I got a chance to, and he's a very versatile designer. Yes, he's known for his architecture work, but he's also a very talented, like automobile designer. So as I was working over there, I was working on like the more traditional architecture projects, but because of Gurjeet's interest in automobile design and other disciplines of design, I got a chance to work on some of those projects, and that taught me that learning architecture doesn't mean that I can only design spaces and buildings. I think what I learned in architecture can be applied to so many other disciplines, and I could see Gurjeet doing it like in front of me, and I got a chance to kind of do that and dabble with it, and I found that to be very fulfilling and very exciting. So that opened my mind about looking at architecture not just as a profession, but as a set of learning that I can apply to other aspects of design. And being in Ahmedabad was great because I was close to NID, had a lot of friends over there, and I got a chance to dig into what's happening at NID, and exposed to like even more design avenues and streams over there. Also, when I was doing my architecture program, there's a fellowship in India. I don't know if it still exists. It's called KVPY. It's Young Scientist Fellowship Award. And in my second year of architecture, I had submitted a proposal for that fellowship. And it was basically about like a new kind of brick bonding that can make better thermally insulated buildings. And somehow they liked the proposal. I got that fellowship, and under that fellowship, every summer of my architecture program, like 4 years, I got a chance to go to IIT Bombay and IDC, Industrial Design Center, and get to work with a very, very, I'll say, versatile professor. He's no longer at IDC. His name is Professor Ravi Hazra. He also had an architecture background, and he was trying to do things in solar passive architecture. He was also an industrial designer. He used to teach industrial design and visual design at IDC. So every summer at IDC, and I was exposed to so many new streams of design. So it was more like the more exposed I got to different disciplines of design, I could see how architecture can connect to them, and what I was learning can have wider application. And yeah, just spending 4 years at IDC was like, oh, I want to be here. I want to kind of spend my time here. I want to kind of work with all these nice, cute, cool projects. And that was a very easy path for me to move from architecture to interaction design. So experience of working with Gurjeet and how he used architecture with other disciplines, and exposure to NID and IDC made it very clear for me that I wanted to move to interaction design.
That's spectacular, and I must say that you had your every options, not actually options, but actually your every decisions which you made in life so to the purpose you actually wanted to achieve.
I can say that in the hindsight, in those moments, nothing is planned. It was like it was like very much led by like feelings, what I was interested in. And growing up in India is like also like career. Where do I have a better career? And I would be dishonest if I just say was just about passion. This was also being very practical about like where do I have a better career. And I graduated from IDC, did my master's over there in 2008, and UX design was picking up at that point of time, especially in India, and I could ride that wave. So I think that was the more practical decision, part of my decision, but a lot of it was more like I was just inspired and I wanted to kind of invest my time and energy in this new domain. So I would say both of it was there.
That's wonderful. So yeah, actually ride the wave, and you actually end up in Yahoo first, and then you have actually spent 9.5 years in Google, and now you're actually an head of design at Asana. So how has your this wave of journey been?
So I'm not the head of design at Sana. I am actually the head of growth and adoption. So it's a large team, and my team works on making the product more easy to adopt in the early days of teams using Asana or Asana. Both the names are fine. It's actually based on like the Buddhist or yoga asana, so that's where the name comes from. But in America, people always refer to it as Asana, and that's how it's like become more popular. But the real name is Asana. Uh, so Sanskrit word. So, anyways, to answer your question, yeah, my journey has been a little wild, and uh, I when I talk to people, I often compare my journey to like some of the shots in Jurassic Park, because my journey has been very adventurous at times. It has been very unexpected, as I was saying, like not a lot, like very little of it was planned, and very little of it was traditional. It has been thrilling at times, because at least in the last 6 years at Google, I got to work on a lot of like emerging technologies, from self-driving cars to VR to AR. And on these projects, we were pushing the boundaries of technology to find, like, to solve new kinds of problems. And we had no idea if things are going to work. So there was always a thrill of like, is this going to work? Is this not going to work? And many a times things didn't work. So it was has been very thrilling. And I will also say it has been scary at times, because I have I've intentionally, that's the intentional part, put myself in new fields and new disciplines where I don't know a lot about those disciplines. I don't know about that product space. I don't know about the technology. And suddenly I'm leading a design team. And it's this very uncomfortable feeling that I don't know anything about this space and I'm expected to lead. So there have been scary moments, but uh, you just kind of focus, learn, and get over it.
Yeah, absolutely. So when a person is actually pushed out of his comfort zone, that's when he actually starts to succeed and also to learn new things. And if you don't learn new things, you just go behind the time. So that's actually great that you actually could push yourself, and you push yourself to a greater edge, that you have actually achieved a lot.
Yeah. I would also say that I think my biggest reward during this period have been just some of the most brightest and smartest people I have worked with. And in addition to just having a growth mindset, it's like these people who have helped me grow personally and professionally. Some of them have been my role models. So I think it's just like, apart from the work, it's more importantly, it has been the people who have been very fortunate to work with closely, that who have inspired me and who continue to inspire me.
Yeah, actually, you just told me your life journey, and with that, I could just summarize that people have have been a greater influence in your life. People have actually shaped how you are today, and also how your a path of your journey have been. It wasn't by your decision making, but it was actually by what influenced you along the way.
Exactly. So I'm very grateful to those people. I mean, without their inspiration, I don't know what I would be doing.
That's great. So with that, let's actually dive into UX now. So can you just define UX for us? And you actually before talking, you had actually mentioned that UI is actually just a sub part of UX. So how do you define UX, and how does everything work around?
Yeah. So I'll go back to my our previous conversation. We were talking about architecture, where I was saying it was architecture was creating a series of like stitching a series of experiences that can make people feel something with a very clear intent, like what we want people to feel. So I actually want to kind of draw a parallel between architecture and interaction design, or more like digital user experience over here, because it's important to kind of reflect on it. Uh, I would say the discipline of user experience is, especially for digital products, is very nascent. It's barely, you can, like, 30, 35 years. It might have been in more research labs earlier, but like the more consumer side of this discipline is barely a few decades old. And when you compare with architecture, which is like some number of thousands years old, that discipline had so much time to mature and refine. And every discipline starts with solving a problem. Architecture started with solving the problem of shelter and safety. Shelter from the weather elements, safety from animals. And at its core, that's what it does. That's the utility of it. And then you add more functions and utility. And when you start meeting utility, you start thinking of aesthetics. And when you start kind of, hitting the bounds of aesthetics, you start thinking about feeling, oh, how I should feel over here. Okay. So, and then as you're thinking about feeling is a lot very sensorial. Like, what should it feel when you touch it? What should it feel when you smell it? Okay. So architecture has already gone through that journey. And when it comes to digital design or UX design, which is where UX is often referred to, I think we are in the very early stages of that journey of maturity. So when I started my journey of as an interaction designer at Yahoo, a lot of the work we were doing was primarily based on utility. Let's get this thing done. We want people to be able to send Yahoo email through Yahoo, and the focus was entirely to stitch like the right user flow steps next to each other so that people can very efficiently, very quickly, without minimal error, complete that flow. There was some focus on like what's the visual experience of it, but that was not the most important thing. Now, if I look at the industry now, I think utility of like, or the usability, if you may call it in our UX terminologies, that is a given. It has to kind of solve that problem. It is no longer like a unique feature. Oh, my app is more helpful or usable than the other app or the other product. It is more fundamental to any product that we build. I think people now are starting to differentiate products on the level of delight that it kind of creates and the value the value they offer in terms of more human connection. There has been so much more awareness in these days around making products more inclusive. That was not a consideration 10 years back. So coming back to your more focused question on like what is user experience, I think user experience today is an amalgamation of multiple things. It's about how we can create a journey for a consumer to get something done. At the core of it is still utility. I am waiting for dinner. I don't want to cook. I want to order something from outside. Be it Swiggy in India or be it DoorDash over here. The utility is the core. Can I find food options? Can I search them, browse them, filter them to my liking? Can I customize what I'm ordering? Can I track if my food is on the way? Is it being delivered now? Is it delivered to the right address? If there's something goes wrong, can I talk to the person delivering it? Can I lodge a complaint if something goes wrong? So that's the core utility. I think everyone is solving that. And I feel still that utility is a big part of that experience. But as I was saying, a lot of these, as an industry, we are spending more time on delight now. And that's where we're starting to differentiate, because Swiggy and DoorDash, they solve the same problem. At a utility level, they are pretty much the same. But how do they differentiate? And that's the delight factors that they differentiate on. And these are these micro interaction, micro moments that makes it like, oh, this feels so nice. And it could be a very simple interaction where you like, on say mobile web, if you pull down the page, it reloads. And I don't know if you know, like Facebook use that interaction pattern to kind of drive more engagement. So user experience is now utility and plus delight. I hope in the next 10 years it becomes more sensorial, it becomes more immersive. We're starting to see those signals, but it's a long journey ahead.
Congrats to all of you who made it till the end. I really hope you liked our show. If you did, please leave us a review on YouTube comment box. And by the way, if you had any question which came up because of the content we covered with our guest, go on YouTube, go on Instagram, and you can leave us a comment. We will surely get back to you and help you as much as possible. arttown.store, that's the website name, and our Instagram ID too. Find us and talk to us. We are waiting to converse with you.